Hello.
Mr. Fiat, good afternoon. This is Ian Aframed doing a communications check with you. How do you hear me?
I hear you very well and loud and clear.
Loud and clear also. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Ask him about if
Daniel, I have one minor query just with respect to the running of the event. I will be switching, spotlighting the individuals as they speak, and I just want to clarify that as we move between speakers, you will give a slight introduction for each speaker as we move between each one. Is that correct?
Of course, exactly. I have in front of me the agenda, so the running order. And before introducing each individual speaker to take the floor, I will give a very brief introduction, where they're from, and then briefly introduce their topic. This will not take more than 1 minute, by the way, so just a few seconds, and then immediately hand over to the individual to speak. Does that sound good?
Perfect, Daniel. That's perfect. And what I will do is have you spotlighted in between, and as the speakers introduced, I will spotlight them and then unspotlight you as you finish.
That's excellent.
And the speaker commences. That's perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Daniel. We now have.
Now let's do the test, get Benamo test.
Good afternoon, Mr. Benahamu. This is Ian Aframed calling. How do you hear me?
You.
Mr. Benahamu, thank you. I hear you loud and clear, and the communications are correct. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hearing you well also.
I would now request that all speakers remain online now as we prepare for the commencement of this. We have all speakers in attendance and the operator
Good afternoon, and thank you all for following this webinar on countering illicit trafficking in Central Mediterranean, the Sahel, and the Gulf of Guinea. Streamed on YouTube and Facebook, and thanks to all the extraordinary panelists you'll meet today. I'm Stefano Turchetto, Rear Admiral of the Italian Navy and proud commander of Operation Irini, co-chairing this webinar with the European Union Special Representative for the Sahel, Manuela Claudia Del Re. Manuela, thanking you for this great idea that I happily embrace and for which I offer my
is obvious in terms of criminality and the kind of effect it has on economics, for instance. But I would like to say also that it is very important to reflect on illicit trafficking for the power the illicit traffickers have in mobilizing people, in mobilizing resources, in affecting the roots of the resources, and it is obviously very important for us, especially in talking within the framework of a mission like Irini, to think about what kind of strategies we can develop together. I can tell you that, of course, if we think about the situation nowadays, we can point out the fact that there are negative and also positive aspects to a certain extent, because while there is a continuous deterioration of the situation, destabilization, and of course there have been, for instance, in the Sahel, 2 coup d'etat, and there is a growing violence, internal displaced people who are growing, refugees, and other serious effects of the actual situation. At the same time, never in history there has been so much attention towards this region as there is today. And I also want to say that in line with the tragedy that we are all witnessing of the war in Ukraine, I have to tell you that, for instance, countries like the Baltic states, who are demonstrating a huge interest in the region, unlike before when probably I would say, especially the countries of the Mediterranean were interested in Africa and in the Mediterranean itself. Countries like the Baltic states have demonstrated to be forward-looking, engaging in the Sahel and in the region for a number of reasons that nowadays are becoming quite clear to us, and it's clear that we have to acquire that kind of mentality by which we look at the geographical map in a very expanded way. I just want to say that, of course, as regards the European Union, we have also been investing recently very much in the region. Of course, we have many frameworks that are point of reference for us, from La Coalition Sahel to the new European Integrated Strategy for the Sahel. And the most important aspects in this strategy, that is the guide, the philosophical inspiration, and also the political, let's say, framework in which we act, are the concept of governance, because of course the illicit trafficking is also possible when the governance is not working, and also the fact that we need to put in place a mutual accountability between the countries of the region, in particular the Sahel, but also with the countries in the north and in the south, and also of course between us, the European Union, and the countries of Africa and the Mediterranean. I conclude by saying that of course we need a more a broader, I would say, community-based approach. that would reverse the incentive structure that now makes illicit trafficking such an attractive economic option. And of course, this is very much in line with the idea that we need an integrated system in which, of course, each actor is relevant and fundamental, including the military, of course, but we will have prominent representatives of the sector that can speak later, but also, of course, in a more, let's say, in a wider perspective, a more prismatic approach that would allow, in fact, to cooperate all together for the same objective, which is the stabilization of these regions, the contrast towards illicit trafficking, changing some typical schemes, such as, for instance, illicit trafficking of human beings that must be changed into the opportunity for people to move in legal pathways and so on. So this seminar is so important for me. I am ready to learn a lot from our prominent speakers, and I thank again Admiral Turchetto and his team, and also the EAS represented by Charles Fries, who is honoring us with his presence, for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, and of course we give the opportunity to start the seminar to Daniel Chiotto. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to our discussion today on countering illicit trafficking in the central Mediterranean, Sahel, and Gulf of Guinea. Let me first thank you first to Admiral Turchetto and to Special Representative Del Rey for actually organizing this meeting, which I think is very timely, especially in the current security context, and also with some of the EU developments that have already been mentioned. I should also like to say at the very beginning as well that the organizers have made my life as the moderator very easy, not only because of the excellent organization behind, but actually because I feel honored with the level of speakers and the wealth of knowledge in this virtual room. So I want to try and start this discussion, if I can, by first turning to Charles Fries, who is the Deputy Secretary General for Common Security and Defense Policy and Crisis Response at the External Action Service. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Fries. And what I would like you to do, if possible, in the next 10 minutes is try and follow on, at least from some of the points that Emanuela Del Rey already put on our agenda, which is the kind of broader security context in which the EU finds itself. Of course, we are focusing at the moment on the Ukraine crisis, but of course, we also continue to work in areas such as the Central Mediterranean, Sahel, and Gulf of Guinea. And of course, you personally have been very busy in the last few months, actually, not only on these geographical areas of interest for the European Union, but also for the newly adopted and endorsed strategic compass, where indeed you talk about the security dimensions of these geographical areas, but you also specify what the EU can do, not only in terms of the operations and missions that it has already through CSDP, but also now looking to the future, what we can do more in depth with our partners, and also as a union, what more we can do in these geographical areas. And before handing the floor to you, Mr. Fries, just also to say thank you again to the organizers for very cleverly putting all of these three regions together, I would say, in the title, because I also think, and I'm sure that you will talk to this issue as well, the importance of the regionalization, or let's call it the more integrated approach, which underlines everything that we do at CSDP. So, Mr. Fries, I want to hand you the floor for 10 minutes. Great to see you online again, and very much looking forward to your views and thoughts. Please.
Good afternoon, Daniel. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to be with you this afternoon. As you said, Daniel, I think it's important, of course, we are all very much focused on this Ukrainian crisis, but as you said, we should not be distracted only by this issue, because we have also great, huge security interests in the Sahel, in Libya, in West Africa. So, of course, what's happening in Ukraine is our top priority for the moment, but it doesn't mean that we have forgotten other theaters where our security interests are at stake. And so first, I would like also to thank very warmly the organizers of this webinar, the EU Special Representative for the Sahel, Emanuela Del Rey, and also the Admiral Ciochetto, the Operational Commander for Irini, who have been at the initiative of this very timely and I'm sure interesting meeting. As it was mentioned by Emanuela, I think, and also by you, Daniel, we are the Sahel, which is in the middle of this great region between West Africa and Libya. The Sahel is facing multiple challenges, not only security problems, but also political instability, economic, humanitarian difficulties, and a social crisis. And what is very concerning is that these multiple crises are spreading further and are starting to impact the coastal states of West Africa. And also we know that the difficulty that we are facing in the Sahel is coming from what happened in Libya after the action in 2011. And so there is no stability in the Sahel without stability in Libya, and the opposite, of course, is also true. So I think we can see this very close interaction between what's going on in Libya, in the Sahel, and in the in the coastal states of West Africa. I mean, all this is interlinked, interdependent, intertwined. And so in face of such a situation, which is a threat to the security of Europe, the EU is stepping up its long-standing commitment for more stability in this very broad region. And I would like to mention at the beginning that precisely because it's a key region for our interest, we have deployed 5 CSDP missions and operations in Libya and in the Sahel. And it represents more than 1,800 staff. That means that 40% of the staff committed in our EU CSDP missions and operations in the world are in Libya, are committed to Libya or to the Sahel region. So that means that we are very much committed to this. And it means also that among the activities of our missions and operations, the fight against illicit trafficking, which is the subject of our webinar, it's a key dimension. It's a key part of this commitment. So I will try to now to focus on in the different geographical areas. First, if I start with Libya, you know that since 2013. We have had a civilian mission called UBAM, that means European Union Border Assistance Mission in Libya, which is a mission supporting the Libyan authorities in developing border management. And since 2018, UBAM Libya's mandate has been broadened to include assistance to the Libyan authorities also in the areas of law enforcement and criminal justice. And if we have done this, it's because our objective is to disrupt organized criminal networks involved notably in smuggling migrants, human trafficking, and terrorism. So I think we are really here at the heart of our subject. A second example is, of course, the Operation Irini, who is led by Admiral Ciochetto. This operation was launched 2 years ago in order to contribute to the return of peace and stability in Libya. This is an operation mainly focused on the respect of the arms embargo, but it has also among its different tasks the fight against oil smuggling, human trafficking, and migrant smuggling. And I can tell you that this operation is not only important for the Libya stability, but also for the stability of the Sahel, because we know that the weapons which arrive in Libya, after that they can go into the south, and that's why what happened 10 years ago contributed to the destabilization of the Sahel. And I would like to say that Operation Iweni is working, is delivering. I would like to remind all of you that Operation Iweni has got significant results with 22 inspections of vessels since its creation. And Operation Iweni has sent 35 reports to the UN panel of experts documenting violations of the arms embargo, particularly. So I think it's very important not only to inspect, but also to report about what's happening up the coast of Libya, because Iweni is the only international actor who is implementing the UN arms embargo. And among these activities, Iweni contributes actively to the fight against oil smuggling and also to the disruption of the human smuggling business model. So that's for Libya. For Sahel, I would like to recall that we have 2 civilian missions. The first one is in Niger, which is called UCAP Sahel Niger, and this mission supports Niger's fight against terrorism, organized crime, and irregular migration. And this mission is working in very close cooperation with Frontex and Europol. And for instance, this mission has supported the creation of 3 mobile units which fight illicit trafficking, and including through what we call in French Compagnie Mobile de Contrôle des Frontières. That means it's mixed units which are performing border checks and who are very concretely trying to stop all kinds of trafficking. So I think it's a good example of how our CSDP missions can contribute to the subject of your seminar. I would like also to mention the second civilian CSDP mission, which is called UCAP Sahel Mali. And this mission supports the fight against illicit trafficking in close coordination, here again, with Frontex and the International Organization for Migrations. And this mission is working, for instance, on the training of the Malian border police. And we know that if we don't have a good, well-trained Malian border police, of course, we cannot fight efficiently against all kinds of illicit trafficking. And also this mission contributes to the financing of projects, very concrete projects contributing to the fight against illicit trafficking. I would like also to say that we are now working with the member states on the possible extension of our CSDP presence beyond Mali, not only in Niger. We have already a civilian mission, but we are reflecting about the possibility to have a permanent military presence in Niger. So if Niger wants it, and also if the conditions are met, but we are working on this possibility, and also in Burkina Faso, because Burkina Faso also is a very fragile country, and I think it needs to have the support of the EU. So on this, we are. I think your seminar is very timely, because we are also working on the elaboration of what we call the strategic review of our 2 missions in Mali, UCAP and EUTM. And this debate will take place in the following weeks, and I'm sure that we can take some good proposals coming from our dialogue. And the last point, and I will finish with this, I would like to say a small, short words on the Gulf of Guinea. As you know, we consider that we should try to prevent the creation in this region of an arc of instability, and that's why we have been doing. We created last year what we call a coordinated maritime presence in the Gulf of Guinea, in order to address the security challenges in this region. Because I would like to recall that this region of the Gulf of Guinea represents 95% of all the kidnappings who are taking place in the world at sea. And we know also that it's a key transit route for drug trafficking coming from Latin America. So we need to be present in this region, and I think this initiative has already given some good results, because last year 10 ships coming from 5 EU member states have participated to this coordinated maritime presence initiative, and have contributed to reduce the number of reported incidents, and also particularly the number of crew, the kidnapping of crew, of people on vessels. So I think it's important. I would like also to mention that we are going to use our new instrument, the European Peace Facility, in order to support these coastal states, particularly, for instance, with the support to patrolling vessels or technical assistance. And we are going also, I would like also to mention the support brought by the European Commission, which has important programs in order to support the aerial capabilities of these countries, such as Benin, Ghana, and Togo. And we are also very much interested in what we call the initiative of Accra initiative, presented by Ghana, precisely to try to see how they can boost the security of this region. So to conclude, I think the EU is very much committed to this region, to this broad region. We are increasing our commitments, our efforts, and I hope that this webinar will contribute to have a better understanding of all the challenges that we are facing, and also to see how we can be more efficient as EU in order to tackle all the threats and challenges faced by all these countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Fries. I think, first of all, you've started our conversation in exactly the right way, which is to first underline the interconnected nature of these different geographical areas. But I also want to thank you for updating us firstly on what the EU is already doing in these regions. But you also, and I thank you again for this, you gave us a flavor also of how the EU is adapting, I think, to different circumstances in these parts of the world. And I think that's also very, very important. You also mentioned as well some of the new tools like the coordinated maritime presence, also the use of the European Peace Facility, which no longer seem to be acronyms anymore, but have a real substance behind them. So thank you very, very much for that, Mr. Fries, and I'm sure we'll come back to you. Thanks for that. I want to now, if possible, move to our second speaker, and I'd like to invite Mr. Maman Sambo Sidikou, who's the High Representative of the African Union for Mali and Sahel. Mr. Sambo Sidikou, if I can, we've just heard now a European Union perspective on some of the challenges and also on some of the measures that can be taken. But I wonder from your perspective how you reflect upon the international and regional partnerships at play in the region, especially with the EU, but I guess with other international partners as well, and how you think these partnerships can actually help adequately address some of the challenges that we see in these regions posed by organized crime. So I want to invite you now, please, sir, if I can, to share your views from your perspective as well. And hopefully then combining both the EU and then the African Union perspective, I think our debate will be a lot richer. So please, Mr. Sidikou, I want to hand the floor over to you now, if possible.
Thank you so much, Daniel. You'll quickly see that complicity has been developing over years between not only AU and EU, but also between individuals, such as my bon ami, and I've been listening to DSG Fries. We were together not long ago in Bamako. And of course, we share the same concerns and views. But I would like, first of all, to really thank all of you for the opportunity to participate and to benefit from the rich experience of all the other stakeholders, including my paisana, because her name is Spanish, or sounds Spanish, so I guess we are compatriots, at least at heart. That's Beatriz Leon. Admiral, I've been working with military so much so that some people call me general. I don't know why they call me general. I wish I could be a general and just retire. And then President Benamou, I've been often to your country. We're very close. So I really want to take advantage of this situation to learn from you all. I would like to, from the outset, say again this, but I send a liner to you. But this topic is important. It is just for those of you across the Mediterranean, but even more so for, I think, for us on this side of the Mediterranean and all the way down to the Gulf of Guinea, as this G-Freeze was mentioned earlier. While violent extremists and jihadi groups continue to threaten the peace and security of the Sahel region, transnational organized criminal groups are taking advantage of insecurity to not only carry out piracy and kidnapping activities in the Gulf of Guinea, but also enjoying a booming illicit trafficking of narcotic and of drug, arms, and person, mostly, Emanuela, mostly girls for prostitution, using the centuries of old trans-Saharan trade routes. For example, and I was looking at some of the figures provided by UNODC, West Africa serves as a major transit area of cocaine trafficking for almost shipments to Western and Central Europe. Individual drug seizure data suggests cocaine trafficking from countries including Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, my native Niger, Nigeria, and Senegal has increased over the past 2 years. So Sahel is also a major route for cannabis resin trafficking, with reported involvement of individuals affiliated with Sahelian armed groups. Additionally, I could say that drug trafficking as well as illicit trade in firearms and other goods are contributing to terrorist financing and operations. I'm just repeating some of the things I heard earlier. Terrorist groups are reported to be engaged in the taxing and protection of illicit drug shipments, or small arms trafficking, kidnapping for ransom, very close to my heart, also something that's becoming terribly worrisome, cattle rustling, and illegal gold mining. It is clear that linkages between transnational organized crime and terrorism all represent major obstacles to achieving peace, security, and development in West Africa and the Sahel. So given this disturbing situation, including increasing linkages and intertwining of these issues, most of which are clearly facilitated by the same criminal cartels and networks, it is therefore no wonder that the region, that is West Africa and the Sahel, continues to be a priority concern for African Union, considering the potential for threatening international peace and security. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is within this context that I would like to table a few thoughts to generate a conversation for the stabilization of a broader West Africa and Sahel region with regard to tackling the issue of illicit trafficking. First, we need to continue to focus on something that DSG Freeze mentioned, that is focus on prevention. For as it is said, prevention is better and cheaper than cure. Preventing requires us to address issues involved at the highest political level, regional and at the international levels. We must continue to encourage and contribute to ongoing state building efforts across West Africa and the Sahel, especially in those countries struggling with weak governance systems that make them particularly attractive to trafficking networks along at least two lines. One, we need to address endemic corruption, rule of law, and political instability, which may lead to state capture. I read here generally defined as where high-level elites seek to capture the state to issue exception from law enforcement and enable certain criminal activities from which they can profit, and or state patronage, defined as where officials strategically turn a blind eye to criminal activities, particularly when such activities purportedly provide security and economic benefits in marginalized areas where the state state rather, lacks the ability to deliver development and services. But for example, now second line, I would like to encourage increased international support through regional partnerships to strengthen national capabilities for comprehensive and cooperative responses to trafficking. Exactly what DSG Freeze has been elaborating on. Whatever our bilateral engagement and interest, we must continue to give multilateral engagement the deserved primacy, including building on international legal and institutional frameworks, as in the case of multinational efforts against piracy in the Gulf of Guinea has amply demonstrated. And I was in Somalia a few years back, and of course you remember the huge program that you have there, visiting often your colleagues in Djibouti, and that also has given the results we know. Now, secondly, in terms of programmatic response and delivery on the ground, we need to be pragmatic. I would say that we have to work with communities and with both government and non-governmental institutions, develop and implement targeted programs and projects that will improve the economies of coastal and Sahelian communities, especially with regard to poverty alleviation for youth and women. Emanuela and I were not long ago in The Hague discussing these same issues, and we all indicated that mistake must have been to forget that these areas pretty much linked. And somehow we all waited till things started unraveling. Not you foresaw it, but I mean, more targeted intervention would have been required to make sure that Sahelians and coastal folks understood from day one that their destinies are very much linked in this fight we're waging. I would say it's a lack of opportunities and frustration that make our youth receptive to migrant smugglers, human traffickers, and sexual exploitation, as well as radicalization by violent extremist groups. We have to make our programmatic interventions holistic in a manner that they not only provide the required opportunities for women and youth, but also promote broader peace building and state building in these otherwise marginalized communities. Thank you for your patience. I will stop here and hope we can engage further during the conversation that will follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sidiku. And I want to thank you firstly for being even more precise on some of the challenges associated with illicit trafficking. I think you've helped us understand some of the challenges involved. I also want to thank you as well for putting on the virtual table already so far some suggestions and ideas, and I particularly welcomed your reference to the importance of prevention and multilateral solutions as well. Thank you so much. I'd like to now also, in the interests of time, move to our third speaker if I can, and I want to introduce and welcome Mr. Mohamed Ben Hamou. And you, sir, are the president of the Moroccan Center for Strategic Studies. And I would also invite you in the next few minutes, as well as to outline your views, to also give us your own interpretation and reflections also on this issue of the transnational nature of organized crime in the Sahel and Sahara region, and also how it connects with West Africa. So really, I would really like to welcome you and take from you, and after your presentation, what you perceive to be some of the major regional and international challenges. And maybe, if you would like to as well, offer your own ideas on some of the ways forward as well, given the objectives of this seminar. So please, sir, I want to hand the floor to you and look forward very much to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I want, first of all, to thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to be in this great panel with some friends, which I am very happy to meet after this pandemic, even if in the virtual, but I hope that we can have the opportunity to to meet on other conditions now. Yeah, I heard all what the panelists says, and it was really very important. What I will try to share with you in this minutes that. I think that we need to develop a common understanding on what is going on this area. And I think that, of course, we are more looking for some operational response to what is happening, but in the same time, I think that we need to have some, I will say, to keep one eye on what is happening in this Sahelian reality. In the last decade, the transnational organized crime in Sahara and West Africa has become a matter of major regional and international concern. In terms of geography, this semi-desert region faces complex governance, security, human rights, development, and humanitarian challenges. The level of human development in the region is among the lowest in the world. The states of the Sahel are afflicted by structural food security and nutrition problems that periodically require large-scale humanitarian responses. The Sahel support over 120 million people at current growth rates. The population is likely to double in the next 25 years to around 250 million people. The chronic instability suffered by some states reflects profound governance challenges, including lasting structural weaknesses and over-centralizations. Several states have endured several decades of political instability, whether as the result of armed rebellions or military coups, etc. This chronic instability has had disastrous impact on the region in the social and, of course, economic development. And it is essential that local population are made fully aware of the potential effect of terrorism on their lives. Terrorism has plagued the Sahel for over a decade, but the situation has deteriorated significantly during the past years. As you know, the Sahel became further destabilized in aftermath of the Libya crisis and conflicts as arms began to flow in. The emergence of a major drug trafficking problem has served only to exacerbate an already precarious situation. The situation of stability and security in the Sahel is a priority, and the conflict, displacement, weak border management, weak state capacity and capability, and the presence of transnational criminal and terrorist organizations have resulted in the proliferation of weapons and a sharp increase in drug and people trafficking. Many of the region's large-scale crises and conflicts are largely interconnected with common root causes and effects. Such interdependence in the region means that an isolated country-specific approach to managing conflict is often insufficient and will not likely prevent the prospects of spillover elsewhere. Indeed, most cycles of rebellion, violence, and displacement in the Sahel countries have been caused by issues which surpass national control and whose resolution require a collective response and based on regional cooperation. It is essential that states of the region share a common understanding of the current security challenges and of areas of common interest for cooperation. This has not been the case in the past. The Sahel-Saharan region has become a central area of convergence between organized transnational terrorism and armed conflicts, with the serious consequences for state within the region and international community. Terrorism and transnational organized crime poses significant threat to the survival of fragile democratic institutions and economic stability of the countries in the zone. These are expanding and repositioning themselves as alternate providers of governance, security, services, and livelihoods through their pernicious grip of the ungoverned and weakly governed spaces. The region has become an amalgam for armed conflict, political instability, diverse security threats, and organized crime activities that include trafficking in human, drugs, and as well as small arms and light weapons, kidnapping, piracy, and other forms of transnational organized crime. The illicit revenue made by criminal organizations are sunk into national economies through money laundering or otherwise, as seriously hamper the economy stability and foreseeability through corruption and intimidation. Organized crime affect national democratic institutions. The collusion and complicity of some officials with criminal networks have helped carve out an illicit trafficking corridor that stretches from West African coast to the Horn of Africa, from the south of North Africa to the Gulf of Guinea. Through these illicit trafficking routes, criminals and terrorists alike are moving people and products. They employ the latest technological advances and use commercial jets to move drugs, people, small arms, crude oil, cigarettes, counterfeit, and pirated goods, and toxic waste through the region, generating massive profit. Illicit markets are growing across these regions to meet global demand for arms, natural resources, diamonds, and other precious minerals, illegal fishing, stolen luxury cars, etc. Smugglers and traffickers who intake the cocaine from Latin America will typically transport drugs and other contraband overland across the Sahel and North Africa before crossing into a destination market in Europe. Cocaine trafficking remain among the most lucrative illicit activities. West Africa has also become a major transit point for heroin destined for North America. West African organized crime has become a major global problem. The traffickers are connected to other international criminals and operate in global illicit markets. They start to constitute well-structured corporations, but they are largely individualistic and highly flexible. Transnational organized crime represent a sizable challenge to the balanced and sustainable development of countries, and also a threat to the overall stability and security of these countries, the region, and neighboring regions. Terrorists, rebels, criminals are becoming players themselves in illicit markets with illicit trafficking, and using the proceeds to finance their terror campaign and export violence to other regions. If we do not act strongly, the region will remain a provider of safe havens where terrorists and criminals all over the world find refuge. The deteriorated security situation in Mali, Chad, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Nigeria, among others, and the crisis and conflictual dynamics in Libya have a bad impact on regional and international security. The stability in Libya depend on the stability of the Sahel, Sahara, and vice versa. Libya continues to be challenged by violence and insecurity. External foreign states have intervened in and continue in these complex regional dynamics. They have either intentionally or unintentionally affected illicit cross-border activities. Volatility in the central Mediterranean and Sahel has made the region host to numerous stockpiles of weapons over the past decade. With government controls, weakness, proliferation of weapons have increased, particularly at the hand of non-state actors, and has allowed organized criminal and terrorist organizations to use violence or to thrive thereof further their illicit businesses. The illicit arms and drugs market have had devastating effect on the countries in the region, prolonging the conflicts and fueling violence and instability. The human smuggling market has been spent in the region as a result of a lot of factors. Migrants are not only vulnerable to being trafficked and contracting and spreading the virus in this time of the pandemic, but are also at risk of being radicalized and may participate in organized criminal activities. Countering illicit trafficking in these zones require a collective response based on regional cooperation. We need to develop a common understanding with an inclusive and balanced approach. All the international organizations and countries seeking peace in this part of the world can take part in this cooperation. The external states must stop having contradictory agendas in this region. We need to bring African responses to African challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benhamou, for sharing your views and your thoughts as well. I'd like to come back to the point that you raised right at the beginning of your presentation, which was this call for a more of a common understanding. And I think you also highlighted some of the different interests involved, different business models, different political contexts in the region as well. So I want to thank you for that. Because also you helped me introduce our next speaker, who is actually going to try and help us understand all of these different crises, all of these different interconnections. It is quite a difficult task, but I'm glad that Ms. Beatriz de Leon Gobo is with us. And Ms. de Leon Gobo actually is a conflict, security and justice advisor at First Call Partners. And so again, if I can ask you, Ms. de Leon Gobo, to take the floor and actually help us understand what we've been hearing in the last few presentations, which at least to my ears is a layering of different crises, different interconnections, and also we've heard reference to the importance of prevention. We've also heard reference to root causes. But I'm hoping from your perspective, you can try and help me as the moderator understand with a bit more clarity and precision how we can actually tackle these challenges. So please, the floor is yours, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and thank you very much to the EU High Representative Emanuela Del Rey, and of course to IDINI for having organized this excellent seminar. As I am the last speaker, it's quite challenging for me to try to be as good as the other speakers, especially because they've already said so much and so valuable. I really learned a lot for all your insights. So I just want to focus, as Daniel was saying, in three what I think are the key points to understand a bit the context of the EU operations, of the region, of this transnational aspect, which is so important to be able to understand illicit trafficking, but also terrorism. Because I don't think right now in the Sahel, Gulf of Guinea, Central Mediterranean, you can talk about one crime or one type of crime. You need to talk about this transnational component and also polycriminal component, which is illicit trafficking and crime in general. So having said that, I'm going to try in these next 10 minutes to respond to three questions. The first one, how do armed groups and terrorist groups and also crime networks, of course, take advantage of the geography, but also social organization, political organization, and the security crisis in the Sahel? Secondly, I will try to go specifically on what are the links that intertwine these armed groups and the criminal networks, because as we were saying, there's a lot of overlap between actors. So it's good to understand how to tackle all at the same time, because I know the EU operations does not target the criminals, they target all of them. So I think it's important to understand all this intertwine that happens, all these overlaps in the actors. And thirdly, as a conclusion, I would like to point out some policy recommendations, because I think it's key in this kind of webinars to try to have some lessons learned and how to go forward, especially to law enforcement agencies, but also to international partners. So having said that, I'm going to start answering the first question. So how is it that armed groups and also crime networks are able to have control a very large part of the Sahelian region, unfortunately, and also with some parts of the Gulf of Guinea, and as we mentioned, Central Mediterranean? And I want you to have the map of the Sahel in your mind that I know for sure you already do, and think about the borders. The borders are immense. It's absolutely impossible to be able to target, only because of the immensity of the borders, these kind of transnational groups that are armed groups and criminal networks. So just because of the configuration, geographical configuration of the Sahel, this is very challenging. Even with European, if these borders were in Europe, we will have a lot of challenges too. But on top of the fact that these borders are absolutely immense, and just to put you an example in mind, the border between Mali and Algeria is 1,300 kilometers. The border with Spain and France, I think, is half of it. So it's just an immense border to control. And on top of that, the border control is that it's in a desert. So putting borders in a desert is quite challenging for the countries. So I think having this in mind, we understand how armed groups and terrorist groups and crime groups are able to really tackle all the problems within the border. And for example, I read a study a couple of hours ago, revising for the webinar, that says that jihadist groups actually profit from the fact that borders are so difficult to control, because you need both states, and in the three border areas, all the states, to do almost all the attacks within 100 kilometers range of this. So that's why when you see the maps of incidents, you see that almost all of them are in border regions, and the same with criminal activities. So this is why borders are key to understand how it intertwines. So geography, it's a massive component to understand how these criminal activities works within the Sahel. But on top of the borders, we have also the social organization, which is what are the communities that live in the Sahel? Well, as you know, they are nomadic communities that live in the desert, such as the Arabs and also the Tuaregs, that have been there for centuries, that they dedicate to essentially to trade, these millenary routes of trading, and also to pastoralism. And they are the one that really controls all the trading of all the areas. So at the end, these are the same actors, these communities, that we dedicate, especially in Mali and Niger, to be armed groups, especially Tuareg groups, and criminal organizations. So the first person in the morning can be a part of the armed group, and in the evening, literally, can be a part of an organized crime organization. That's why it's so complex to just pin down what is the reason behind one of the activities. Because if the same armed group control a checkpoint in a route, then they can profit to do business. So this border component and also social component, it's very, very important to understand. A third component is the economical component that I think most of you have already talked about it. So I will just say very briefly, we have a massive demographic challenge. Between 6 and 7 women per children in Mali and Niger. It's unsustainable for the labor market, and also a market in countries where there is no employment or prospects of employment, at least in the northern parts, and countries that has political crisis, economical crisis. It's not the same in the Gulf of the Guinean states. I'm talking more in the Sahelian part, but we need to understand that most of the policies needs to target the root causes, and the root causes are basically economical. Because when you give another opportunity to those people that are probably around my age to do something else with their life, they're going to take it, because it's not that the people want to be criminals. You can die any day. You can have a lot of complications in your life. Of course, they want another exit. The thing is what kind of exit you can do, especially competing with a high profit that is being in a criminal organization, but not only in a criminal organization, but in an armed group. So more or less, I think I was able to picture, to give you a big pictures of why is that criminal organization works so well in the Sahel and wouldn't work that well in other parts of the world. So having said that, as you also know, the criminal illicit trafficking, and I think the High Representative Imam Siddiqui has pointed out very well, has evolved a lot. We have, from the 90s, the cigarettes, the Marlboro cigarettes being trafficking. On the early 2000s, we have the hashish and the cocaine. And now, still with the cocaine and the hashish in mind, from the 2011 Libyan war that we've talked about it onwards, we now have also trafficking, and that in states that are politically and economic very fragile states. There are a lot of crises within those states, and of course, criminal activities and armed groups profit from this chaos to continue creating more chaos, because at the end, that's what really benefits them. And a state that is fragile, that's the only way they can interact. The second, the states are able to coordinate among themselves and be able to be strong and have presence in those areas that are controlled by armed groups, the business is over. That's why they profit. They are really looking forward for the state not able to be in those areas ever, if possible. So with this first part in mind, I would like to point how are the interactions really between armed groups and terrorist groups. And I think I've already give a couple of keys, but I just want to put some of the examples that you might have heard about. For example, Mokhtar Belmokhtar, which was an Al-Qaeda of Maghreb leader from Algeria. He's one of the key pieces of how Al-Qaeda and also other terrorist groups came to be in the Sahel, especially links to Al-Qaeda. So I'm talking about the network JNIM. And he, for example, was nicknamed Mr. Marlboro. He had a lot to do also with cocaine trafficking, and he knew he had to enter into Gao society, especially the tribal society with the Arabs and the Tuareg. So what did he do? He married a Berabiche ethnic woman, and now he has excellent ties. Well, he had, because he died, excellent ties with that organization that allowed him to open into the organized crime domain by the Berabiche. And this is essential because tribal competition among Arabs and about Tuareg communities, it is the key to understand how this crime works. And when a route is, because of security forces are able to control it is cut. The other are very happy about it because they can mobilize all the weapons, all the drugs, all the humans coming from another group. So that is also very interesting to understand. When you cut one route, for example, going to Libya, it doesn't mean that the trafficking necessarily stops. It means that it looks for other ways to go. This is why when we think about the area, we need to think the area as a whole. And this is why, as Maman Sidiko pointed out very well, you need coordination among actors and you need regional response. You cannot go country by country. It's pointless at the end because this is a transnational nature kind of crime. So it is not like murder, it's not like robbery. It has this international component per se. So having said that, I could enter into the links, especially in weapon trafficking or drug trafficking, but I know we're tight on time. So I'm going to try to go directly to the recommendations, as I think they can really help pin down the ideas that I try to share with you this evening. So firstly, as I was mentioning, this is a cross-border component, therefore it requires coordination with all countries. And I know it's difficult to coordinate with some of the countries in the Sahel right now, and I know there's also very powerful dynamics, especially between some countries in the Maghreb, so it is complicated to do a whole regional response in this. But nevertheless, we need to still try, because interoperability and information sharing, it is the key. There is no other key, and we know perfectly with this model when it has worked somewhere else. For example, Mr. Frias mentioned Gulf of Guinea coordination. When this has happened for maritime security, it is a success. So we know we still need to talk to every single actor possible, state and non-state, to continue having good coordination between countries and to continue doing interoperability of forces. Because at the end, the forces in Niger and Mali need to work together to tackle terrorism, to tackle illegal trafficking. It is absolutely necessary. And then, of course, it was also mentioned by Maman Sidiko before, but civil-military cooperation is another essential part to dismantle networks, and particularly working with communities and traditional leaders, because as much as we wish that the states in the Sahel were present everywhere in the countries, it's not the case. The states in the Sahel are not present in some parts of the country. Therefore, we need to go to the local leaders, which are the ones that at the end decide if they go with this armed group, with this other, with this criminal group, with this other. So we need to tackle them. That at the end, what they are trying to do is not only survive themselves, but also survive their community. If they are linked with a criminal activity or they are linked with an armed group, it is mostly because of their survival for the community. And then lastly, I wanted to point out the importance also of investing in job creation for the communities. As I mentioned before, the economic component is incredibly important. And to be able to facilitate the demobilization of criminals, it is not only about tackling the networks, it's also about making sure that there is no more youth that join them because they are desperate. And the way of doing it is investing in creation. It is very complicated in some areas because there is no security. Therefore, how are you going to create jobs? It's something that I know the EU invests a lot of money doing it, and we still need to consider it a priority. And I know we've talked about it, and I know, for example, the European Union has a lot of programs like City Just that tackles specifically this. But one of the main problems in some of these countries is the lack of justice. We need to fight impunity of these crimes. And I'm talking about all the crimes, but also about illicit trafficking, which is one of the crimes that are really never condemned because everyone in the Sahel is focused on fighting terrorism. But illicit trafficking, illicit arms selling, these are the kind of crimes that we need to be condemning. And to fight impunity, we need to strengthen countries' judicial capacities, which are not developed enough to be able to really tackle these kind of challenges, which are very complicated. Again, sharing information with other agencies, it's important to be able to tackle this impunity and fostering coordination in general to avoid among countries that the fact that one of the criminal organizations move to the other because the armed forces are going nearby. And with fighting impunity, it's also among the security forces to avoid especially extrajudicial killings. It cannot be that to be able to solve illegal trafficking or any kind of crime, the only solution is to kill the person that does it. So this is why, to avoid bribery, to avoid extrajudicial killings, I really support all the initiatives that come on the justice system, because I think it's the one that we might think that it's not as visible as, for example, counterterrorism or counter-criminal activity, but it is as probably as important, especially for the long term. And with that, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. De Leon Gobo. Thanks so much. You did help me. You did answer my initial question of helping us understand a bit the complexity. And I very much liked how very clearly you stated some of the suggestions. That was really well done and appreciated. We do have 30 minutes, well, actually less than 30 minutes. We have 25 minutes until the end of this session. And I can already say that we have some questions coming in, which I have saved with me, and I wish to be able to pose to our speakers. But before I do that, let me first bring back in Admiral Turquetto. Maybe you have some views as well, especially on the work of EU NAVFOR IRINI and your role in the Central Mediterranean. So please, sir, I want to hand the floor to you for a few minutes. And then afterwards, we'll go to EU Special Representative Del Rey for her views as well. And then we can come to the questions very quickly, hopefully, towards the end. So please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm honored to speak after such distinguished panelists and experts. Let me say first that this seminar takes place when all eyes are looking somewhere else, and in particular the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Me too, but the consequences of that conflict are also having far-reaching effects on other regions, including the Sahel, the Gulf of Guinea, and the Mediterranean. The latter includes the waters where the joint force under my command operates day and night. IRINI's activities are part of the integrated European approach, involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian lines of effort to stabilize Libya. Quoting the High Representative and Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Borrell, IRINI is not the solution to the Libyan crisis, but an important tool in order to set the conditions for diplomacy to enable a permanent solution for stability in Libya. IRINI, as a EU Common Security and Defense Policy executive operation, acts in the Mediterranean off the Libyan coast since 2020, despite the pandemic and under the umbrella of the UN Security Council, implementing the arms embargo on Libya established by the UN with Resolution 2292 of the 2016 and 2578 of last year. This is IRINI's legal framework for the conduct of a shore inspection on board suspect vessel. Let me also recall that the EU, through IRINI, is the only international actor implementing the mentioned resolution, as Mr. Fries said before. The fight against illicit trafficking in the Central Med is therefore the crucial business of our mission, including not only the smuggling of weapons and military-related material in Libya, but also, with some limitations, the illicit export of crude oil and oil products from Libya. This task is no less important than the main one, in particular due to its impact to the Libyan economy. We also support the disruption of the tragic human smuggling business model that we investigate, study, and report to the Resolution Committee of the United Nations Security Council. We also have an effective cooperation with Frontex. Although the arms embargo is our primary task, the others are not less important on the international stage, and for their effects on the Central Med maritime security and Libya's, but I will say also the Sahel stability. The Med is an area of big interest for both the EU and the illegal traffickers. In the EU Strategic Compass, recently approved by the EU members, it stated that the Mediterranean is a maritime area of EU crucial interest, not only because it's the EU's southern neighborhood, but also because 20% of global maritime traffic transits through it. The presence of a joint European force in the area underlines the strong political will of the member states to monitor the region, deter illegal activities, and whenever requested, to be able to act against any threat to security. Monitoring the naval and air traffic in the area, IRINI is one of the main contributors to the maritime situational awareness in the Central Mediterranean. Thanks to this operation, it's not only by words, but by facts, action, and results that EU demonstrates its position among the most important geopolitical players. In 2 years of existence, Irini has spread no efforts. To illustrate this, I want to mention just a few numbers, some of them already mentioned from Mr. Fritz. 22 ships were boarded, 6,508 ships were investigated, 253 ships were friendly visited with shipmaster consent while transiting in the area. More than 850 suspect flights were investigated. 35 special reports on events of interest were sent to the UN Security Council. 25 airports and landing stripes were monitored. On the other hand, many illicit activities threatening the European and African security take place in the waters between Europe and Africa. Illicit activities that have their roots far from the African coasts and their final objectives, often far from the European coasts. There exist different kinds of illegal routes connecting the north and the south of the Mediterranean. Let's have a look at human smuggling, for example. The phenomenon starts far from the African coast till its outlet to the Mediterranean and till Europe, more often Greece, Italy, and Spain. Using mainly the air assets provided by our participating nations, we collect information on the trajectory at sea of the platform used by the traffickers and report to competent authorities. Of course, in accordance with the ethics of every sailor and international rules on the protection of human life at sea, Irini's naval assets are ready to conduct any rescue operation that may be necessary in the waters in which they operate. There are other routes in continuous evolution. For example, exploiting the instability in the area following the civil war, those related to oil spill illegally from the Libyan pipelines net, outside the national oil corporation's control and shipped illegally. The enduring presence of a criminal organization involved in illicit trafficking and the perspective of profits makes it predictable that oil smuggling will not stop anytime soon. The conflict in Libya during the last decade have shown also how significant is the importation farms in Libya by sea, and how from there they can reach the southern Libyan regions and cross the southern border, reaching other neighboring countries. Of course, after the UN embargo was established, contributing to the disruption of such trades when crossing the Mediterranean, as said, became Irini's main objective. Moreover, as I said, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is having a significant impact in the Med and Africa. The first example that comes to my mind is the impact of the stop of production of wheat in Ukraine. Libya imports 44% of her wheat from Ukraine and 23% from Egypt. The wheat price has already increased by 15% in recent weeks, and is getting worse. This will pump up the instability ashore and at sea, with more trafficking of any kind expected. Another example, nations looking for alternative sources of energy to the Russian gas will motivate criminal organizations and armed groups to increase oil smuggling attempts. Operating in these waters of the coast of Libya has a particular meaning for me. I was the commander at sea in the previous Operation Sophia, and with the same role in the Italian Operation Mare Sicuro. Today I look at the country as Irini Operation Commander. In more than 3 years, I saw what instability here can produce, the many sufferings and the deaths. I also witnessed the calm after the storm, when the ceasefire in Libya was established, the efforts of the international community, and the daily commitment of Irini's personnel. The presence of Europe with Irini is essential to keep the present status, deterring the arms smuggling in the country, and ready to prevent other threats to Libya's stability and to the international security that could arise. As all know, Irini in Greek means peace, and peace is indeed what I wish for all of us. Thank you, and thanks also to Mr. Fiotto, today's moderator, who is doing really a great job. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you very, very much, Admiral. That's very kind of you to say, and thanks very much for giving us that overview as well, in a bit more depth, I would say, about the Central Mediterranean, and of course, your good work in that region as well. So thank you for that. In the interests of time, I now want to hand over to the Special Representative Del Rey, who is now going to also give us an indication, and again, a bit more detail on how the EU is approaching the Sahel. So how the EU sees the Sahel, especially given what was mentioned earlier about the vastness of the space that we are dealing with and the complexity of the challenges we're facing. So please, Special Representative, I would like you to walk us through in the few minutes we have left the EU action in this area. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I would like to, in the very few minutes, just to highlight a few important aspects of the European policy in the Sahel. First of all, I want to thank Admiral Turchetto for having mentioned the emotional cost of all this, which has a huge effect on politics and on the populations. And we cannot underestimate this variable, because it is really driving some of the reactions that we are witnessing today in the Sahel and elsewhere in the region, because it's very, very relevant. When he was talking about the calm after the tempest, this is actually the aim of the European Union. And I want to say, and of course, Charles Fries has depicted very attentively all the aspects of the policy of the European Union. What I would like to highlight in this sense is the fact that the European Union is going through a revision and an adaptation of its policy, and this really demonstrates how flexible it is, given the huge challenges that the European Union is facing in the region, considering that the European Union is the major donor, the most important partner, and yet it is challenged by a number of elements every day. So the fact that we are flexible, the fact that we are ready to adapt, and while maintaining our presence and keeping our interest, I think it's something that is really laying the basis for a very strong opportunities for the future. Of course, reviewing and adapting means diversifying. This word is very used today because of the war in Ukraine, but it's also applicable to the whole, the wider region, not only the Sahel, but the general, region of West Africa, connected, of course, to the Gulf of Guinea and also the Mediterranean. And this diversification is important because we are developing a system of contrast when we talk about illicit trafficking that, of course, tries to systematize, all the participants of within the activities to contrast illicit trafficking, also identifying the proper skills from the different sectors, with many actors that play a very important role, such as states, for instance, in the European Union, the member states, as well, of course, as international organizations. We have heard that there is a collaboration between many operations led by the European Union and other international organizations such as IOM and others, Frontex and so on, but also with regional organizations such as ECOWAS, of course the African Union that is present today, just to give you an idea of how it is developing its activities in order to not only resolve in terms of conflict resolution and contrast, but also prevent, which was also mentioned by several speakers, and it's obviously very, very, very relevant. And this is creating a community of interests, a community of interest that I think is very rational at the moment, also because the problems are very clear, despite, of course, they are so complex, and I cannot go into this complexity. Of course, we need to make it more effective. This is what we are discussing every day nowadays, and also how to connect all the levels that are, of course, interested in let's say, connected with this major issue. I want to say that we need to, of course, avoid, especially, and I will come to the core of the European policy, we have to avoid that politics are made by criminal actors. in the sense that, as Mohammed Ben Amou was mentioning, but also Maman Sidikou, it is something that I always mention. The actual risk of this illicit trafficking and criminal actors is that they actually really create an alternative welfare state. And this is incredible because obviously this feeds corruption, but also, of course, creates an economic cycle. And when communities find an opportunity where there is an immense poverty, there are no chances for the youth, and of course, the areas are very remote and marginalized and abandoned, this alternative welfare state becomes the state, becomes the government, becomes the actual system. And this is something we have to avoid. It's not at all easy. And also we have to, and we are able to do it now, to intervene at the moment, because this is a particular moment for the Sahel, because there is a lot of confusion. It seems that everything is clear, but in fact there is a lot of confusion. We can avoid professionalization in the criminal activities, because it is true that there are terrorists, but there are lots of groups that are really acting on a specific aim, with a specific objective that is not long-term, and it depends on the demand of the market, because they are able to provide, of course, a supply for specific issues. So we can intervene in this if we are systematic, if we intervene, especially identifying the proper actors and putting in place operations such as Operation Irini that can really go and control and show that there is a strong presence and there is a strong will to contrast these traffics. Regarding the European Union activities and especially the inspiring principles. I mentioned earlier the European Union strategy for the Sahel that was defined in 2021. Of course, the strategy, you can imagine, is based on security, on development, but what is most important is really the focus on governance, in the sense that we have identified very clearly that the only way by which we can go to the root causes of the problems related also to illicit trafficking is governance and the absence of the state, as it is called. And in fact, everybody talks about the return of the state. In fact, in many areas, it's actually, let's say, to create the state from a start, in a sense. But this is very important. The other very important element is the civilian surge. I want to point out these two elements in the strategy. Civilian surge means, and Beatrice De Leon Cobo mentioned that, to focus also on the very important actor, which is civil society, for instance, but not only CIMIC, which is very dear to me, and I always predicate about it because I think it's very important to make it sure that we can put together different actors with different skills to create a proper response to the challenges, especially in security issues. To conclude, I would like to say that the European Union, while of course working very closely in the states, trying to expand its ability to operate in different areas, connecting them in a positive way, of course. And we have seen through the description of Charles Fries that we have a huge capital of activities ongoing that really try to attack the problems from the north, from the south, in the sea, on land. It's really a huge amount of activities, and it's a huge capital that we have to enhance all the time. We are also trying to create a sense of regional integration. It is true that now there is a crisis of the G5, for instance, but it is also true that we are investing an immense amount of money in infrastructures that are connecting states and capitals, and this means regional integration. And also, of course, projects such as the Great Green Wall that would like to make people sensitive, especially along the West Africa, of the need to consider the problem of climate a common patrimony. We are investing, I think, 20 billion in this project. I mean, there are many different things. So I will conclude by saying that, and of course, I just want to mention the Global Gateway, which has been defined in the African Union, European Union meeting very recently. And the Global Gateway provides 300 billion euro, of which 150 go to Africa. So we are working in this sense. Therefore, of course, I want to make sure that we know that the European Union is acting properly. Of course, the challenges are immense, but we are there and flexible, able to face all the challenges, and we keep on being the most reliable. And usually I say to the heads of states in the Sahel, for instance, when I meet them, but also in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana recently, we are the most natural partner of West Africa and in general of the Maghreb as well. And therefore, this is, of course, it's an honor for us. It's also a huge responsibility, but this means to put in place the partnership that needs to be revived every single day. It is a challenge, but especially in this moment in which we have this big problem with Russia, and this is changing all our geopolitics, I think it should be one of those very stable points that can help us keep calm and go on and achieve really more equity and justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emanuela Del Rey. That was a very good overview as well, and I specifically liked your point at the beginning about the emotional importance of all of this work and all of this situation as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 minutes left officially of this discussion, but I think we can use those 5 minutes very cleverly and wisely if each of the speakers stick to very short responses. But I think we should try to at least answer the main points from the questions from our audience listening to us. And it may come as no surprise to learn that most of the questions were actually about Russia, funnily enough. But let me put it in a bit more context. That's to say, of course, some of the issues related to energy relations. Firstly, of course, energy relations are changing between Europe and its partners. And secondly, also the consequences with relation to food security, which I think some of the speakers have already mentioned. So the questions that we have from the audience basically is, how do you see the impact of this war in Ukraine and with Russia having a direct impact on the regions that we're talking about? That's a very unfair set of questions to give you with only 3 minutes left. But what I would try to do, if possible, is bring in, firstly, Mr. Sidikou. If I could get a very brief reaction from you, then I will come to Mr. Benhamou, and then I will come to Mr. Leon Kobo. So please, Mr. Sidikou, please give us your impression of how you see the Russia war impacting the work in the regions we've been discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would say it's very obvious. It's the most unfortunate thing that could happen to the world at this stage. Some of us, all these, have gone through some of these things, and we thought it's all over. And particularly in Europe, we were always expecting it there. But as we say in Africa, when elephants fight, something happened to a grass. To me, what I see here is particularly, how do we in Africa, learning from what's happening, work on protecting better our populations? We've been thinking terrorism, we've been thinking all kind of ills, but now we have to ensure that people have food in order not to compound the issues that we have on ground, or where the state is pushed aside or not seen, and others are providing to the people. If you talk about cocaine, you talk about gold mining, you can always think some people have resources to get food to our people, and the centrality of a state will be forgotten. And if our states are not supported to be there, to be seen as providing to their people, then we are in a deeper problem. When I look on the security front, I'm going to stop at that. When I think about NATO, military, essentially, NATO, the question is NATO a sum of strong states, or just what we call a collective for how to put it, for a collective for, so we you cater for some of weaker states in your environment. That's why it is key also that while we're looking into this, the impact particularly on food security, that the biggies in Africa, I don't want to name them, take the responsibilities really for what it is and help us organize ourselves to face what is coming terribly on us. I will stop at that. I don't want to go into more detail. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for that reaction, Mr. Sidiko. That was really good. Mr. Benhamou, I want to come to you now. Please, in 1 or 2 minutes, if possible, please share your views on how you think this war is going to affect the region. And I give the floor to you immediately. Thank you. Sir, I believe you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think that this war will affect the region for sure. What we have of course, to prepare now, it's the economic and social situation post-pandemic, COVID pandemic. And now to this bad situation, the war in Ukraine. The European and the international community are more focusing on Ukraine, and I think it's a very big concern for all of us. But don't forget the Sahel and the situation in the Sahel. A lot of, yes, we are countering the illicit trafficking starting from the Sahel, but I think that we must protect the Sahel, Sahara region from the illicit trafficking who coming out from this region. So we will have, of course, very bad impact, especially on food, and the next step will be a lot of instability, maybe some, of course, rebellion, especially about bread and foods. So I hope that we can together preserve this region from the next turmoil of famine, I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benhamou. That was very clear and to the point. And thank you for reminding or making that reminder that the world is quite a big place, actually, especially for us Europeans. So thank you for that. If I could come now to Ms. De Leon Kobo, if you have some views that you want to share on this specific issue, I give you the opportunity to do so now.
Thank you, Daniel. Just very briefly, I think there is a key component here that is impacting already Africa. That is, as it was already mentioned, the hunger. And with hunger comes the desperation. With hunger comes crime. With hunger comes a lot of very horrible dynamics that we want to avoid. And I've been studying in different parts. It's not only necessarily in the Maghrebian countries that we know it's affected very, very highly because they dependent on Ukraine and Russia wheat, but also in Cameroon, for example, and other countries, we are seeing an increase of prices, of all prices, because it is a kind of a whole escalation of prices. Once the price of something as basic as wheat, it's up, it confluates in all prices of all products. So it is really creating very dangerous dynamics because all prices are up and agricultors are not able to face the cost of them. And that is really impacting all the economic system of these African countries. So I think famine is one of the things how it's going to affect. And then the other one, it's obvious that it is forcing African countries to positionate. I'm not going to say pro or against this war because I don't think they are positioning, but I feel it's very dangerous how some of the countries, African countries, are reacting to this. So I think the other one is a geopolitical component that is going to come out of this because before we could have been seeing Russia and European having the same kind of goals, especially against terrorism. And now, of course, we see African countries, especially through information and misinformation, giving some very worrying trends to the population. So I think those are the two main components how this war is going to affect Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, a very clear response, and indeed very clearly seeing there the potential for aggravation or aggravating some of the stresses that you already mentioned in your earlier presentation. So thank you very much for that. If I could now come maybe to Mr. Charles Fries and give you the opportunity as well to respond, not just to this question on the impact of the war in Ukraine, but maybe you have also some observations from some of the other points raised as well. But I want to give you the opportunity anyway to have a final word. So please, the floor is yours.
I don't know if I have to have the final word, but what I just want to confirm is that what's happening in Ukraine, of course, and can have a big impact on this region when we talk about price increase in food or in energy. But I think here we have a new case of a battle of narrative opposing Russia to I would say to the rest of the world, because Russia tries to say that if there are food demonstrations or an increase of energy prices, it's because of the sanctions adopted by the West. It's not because of the sanctions, it's because of the war which has been initiated by Russia. And who is destroying the Ukrainian wheat production? It's Russia. Who is preventing the vessels to leave the Black Sea in order to export the wheat to Africa, and particularly to all the countries we have talked about during our webinar, who are very much dependent on Ukrainian and Russian wheat? It's Russia. So I think we have here, through the question asked by the participants, by the viewers, we have here an excellent new illustration of this disinformation campaign orchestrated by Russia, and that's why we need to debunk such disinformation and try to we need to restore the truth, and that's why also we need to accompany these countries by helping them, by supporting them, of course, and to see how we can circumvent the negative impact of what Russia has done in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think that was actually an excellent addition to the reflection that we have here. And you said specifically this battle of narratives, which interestingly connects not only with the challenges of food prices, food security, energy security, but indeed a bit more broadly about the political messaging that comes from the war and the response to it. So thank you very much for that. We're coming to the end of the session now and our time together. Let me maybe take this opportunity to thank you as the moderator of this excellent discussion. The organizers told me to spend a few minutes trying to sum up my conclusions or my thinking from this time together. I'm not sure I can do that in the space of 1 or 2 minutes, because actually every idea and every thought was very rich, I would say. But I did take at least, let me say, a few points that I think need to be stressed as by way of conclusion from my side. Firstly, this issue of coordination between regional partners and between bodies like the EU, AU, UN, etc. That seemed to have been underlined on a number of occasions and definitely seems to be of relevance. Also true about this importance of civil and military coordination. That seems to be very clear from everyone that's spoken, that you cannot even hope to have a long-term solution and to try and develop peace and stability in the region without this type of coordination. So I want to also underline that as well. I think another big point that was also raised by a number of our speakers was the importance of addressing root causes. and the importance of prevention linked to this, I would say. And every one of the speakers gave very good examples on how we can prevent, what to look out for, what are the business models, who are the actors involved. This is going to be very crucial for the strategies we develop in the coming years to try and approach these regions as well. But in this issue of root causes, we also come back, I think, to some of the long-standing structural fragilities, if I can say, or vulnerabilities. And I think that was also stressed very well about the demographic issue, firstly, also in terms of the economic incentives for different actors to engage in illicit activities, but also this issue of the fact that people also need not just bread and water, but also the idea of hope as well. And that issue there of job creation, also of economic health or stability as well, seems to be one of the core issues that we need to address, that strikes at many of the, let's say, symptoms of the broader root causes. And I want to thank all of the speakers for making that point very, very clear as well. It is true maybe that in the next few weeks, months and years, we will be dealing with an additional layer to all of these problems because of the war in Ukraine. And again, thank you for your responses at the end. But I guess the overall lesson here is not just that we need more of these types of events and these types of opportunities to talk together, but also, again, coming to this point of much more interaction between the different actors at all levels, a much greater common understanding between these actors as well. And of course, keeping up this EU engagement as well, which I think a number of the speakers have also referred to. So from my side, thank you very much to each of our excellent speakers. It was very rich and fruitful. And I want to hand over now, if I can, to Admiral Turquetto and to Special Representative Del Rey for the final word of thanks. And thank you to our speakers and to our audience. That's all from me. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Let me express my gratitude to all of you for participating in this webinar. Special thanks to Emanuela Del Rey for creating a strong connection with Irini and giving us the opportunity to co-organize this event. Credit also to you, Daniel, for the excellent moderation. It's really a privilege and an honor for me to be part of such an excellent webinar. So thank you very much, Mr. Fries. Thank you very much, Mr. Benhamou, and thank you very much, Mr. Sidiku, and thank you very much, Ms. De Leon Goba. Thank you. I hope to have the opportunity to meet you in the future. And now the floor is to you, Emanuela.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefano, Admiral Turquetto, because without you, it wouldn't have been possible to have such a distinguished panel, because we have worked together, as I said at the beginning. And of course, I also want to join you in thanking our speakers and Daniel Fiot for being such a good coordinator. And I want to name, of course, Charles Fries. It was an honor to have him with us because of his important role and, of course, an important perspective on all the issues that we have touched upon today, as well as Maman Sidikou Monfrère, who is representing a fundamental organization with which the European Union is really developing important policies in the region. Mohammed Benhamou, that I know since a long time, is a true expert in security issues. Thank you for the perspective from Maghreb. And also Beatrice de Leon Cobo, who has really touched upon a number of issues, giving us a very wide perspective. So I really want to thank everybody. And I also want to say simply that every time we talk about these topics, especially with such a distinguished panel, we increase our ability to implement our partnership with the countries of Sahel and West Africa and in general, and we increase our opportunities to tackle these huge problems that are really affecting the populations of Africa. So thank you very much, because everything we do, such as this one, we contribute for a better world. So thank you very much. Okay.
Ok. Grazie, è stato veramente veramente un